Venice Beach, the edgy, artsy locale known as LA's out there beach town. Designed by eccentric millionaire Abbott Kinney in 1905, Venice has always been a vibe since the day it launched and was coined the Coney Island of the Pacific. When you think of Venice today, you most likely think of Muscle Beach, the iconic outdoor gym frequented by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or any of the other quirky iconography that makes up daily life in Venice, like daily drum circles. Or the beachfront boardwalk, where mimes, jugglers, musicians, and street performers inhabit an ever-changing and unforgettable bohemian subculture. So it may not surprise you to know that for today's episode, since my interview subject is someone who lives in this eccentric locale, we'll be doing his interview in a somewhat unusual location. Seb Terry.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining my podcast, and thank you for inviting me into your van.
Welcome, Little Red, and I are very pleased to have you here.
You know what I can say? This is my first time doing a podcast in a van. That's right. Today, I'm in Venice Beach, sitting with Seb Terry in the back of his 1978 VW bus, otherwise known as Little Red. You can check this out at Gratitudeology on Instagram for a picture. Seb is a best-selling author, international keynote speaker, and founder of 100 Things. So what is 100 Things? Well, we'll hear about the tragic pivot point in Seb's life that made him reevaluate everything. So much so that he wrote down a bucket list, though we'll hear why he hates that term, of 100 things that he hoped would propel him towards a sense of happiness and purpose in life. Once he realized the power of finding greater purpose and joy by pushing yourself to experience unexpected things, he turned his personal journey into more, which is when it grew into a global movement. So, here we are, in the back seat of Little Red, in this quirky, cool beach town, about to hear from this quirky, cool guy about how becoming grateful for life's most unique moments can deliver a new sense of meaning and purpose. We're going to hear about his experiences ticking through his own list, and wait until you hear what some of them were, including an experience that brought him to death row, and how paying it forward with this big idea has changed the lives of so many others. I'm Jamie Hess, coming to you from a back seat in Venice Beach with the one and only Seb Terry, today on the Gratitudeology Podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Should we wait 1 second till the plane goes over, do you think? It might be okay. We're okay. All right. So we're here in Venice Beach. Wow, that plane. What?
I mean, he's just doing this. Right?
Are you serious? We're parked on a side street where we thought it'd be quiet, but wouldn't you know, there's literally a stunt pilot hanging out over our heads, just doing loop-de-loops.
A lot of stunt pilots live here.
That is insane. But so there's going to be random noises, but here's the beauty of this interview.
We're also in a van, which is rocking.
So yes, we are in a van in Venice Beach because purchasing a dream car was actually one of Seb's 100 things on his list. Number 90, actually. I mean, lots of dudes would want a Lambo or a Ferrari. I think the VW van tells us a lot about Seb right off the bat. this is your personality. Venice Beach is a place for free spirits. And I want to ask you, what does being a free spirit mean to you?
Oh, wow. Well, I think freedom is obviously a thing that everyone wants and deserves. So I think for me, I love the idea of being able to chase the things that are important to me, whatever they are, personal, professional things. And yeah, that's it. Not being too kind of squashed in by structure in a way.
As I ponder this for a moment, I look out the window and see there's a squirrel. There's a
squirrel.
He was about to jump on Rick, I swear to God. Rick is my cameraman, and a very Venice Beach squirrel, clearly marching to the beat of his own little squirrel drum, has perched just next to Rick's head, next to the van, presumably just vibing along with our conversation. Once I determine we're not in danger of squirrel attack, we continue.
So yeah, being a free spirit, I think, like the truth is we are on a rock which is just spinning through infinite space, and we are somehow on it with a beautiful little, you have a thing balanced on your lap there. And
he points to my Tilden non-alcoholic cocktail, which I brought for us to sip on.
Here we are, we have these drinks here and life's fantastic, but the truth is it's chaos. So I think you have to learn how to just be pretty okay with that. And so I think for me, living a free-spirited life is just being able to kind of move and go with the flow whilst also trying to keep your eye on that horizon that you want to reach. And this is exactly how a young Seb Terry began his journey on this earth. He's always had his eye on the horizon, thanks to parents that expected him to be disciplined, mannered, and driven. I was a very polite boy. My mum would always make sure that I had my manners about me and I was polite. And I just was always taught to just fit in, don't stand out. And that was my life. And I have no doubt that, of course, is a massive reason for why I do what I do now.
So, yeah, there was also a part of him that just knew, deep down, that in order to learn life's greatest lessons, he'd have to stride out into the world and learn in that fascinating way that only the school of life can teach. After moving around a lot as a kid, Seb went to university.
Finished high school, went straight to university, got a degree in human movement. It's actually what it's called.
What is that, like fitness?
I don't know. Yeah,
physiology,
it's all of that. But the brilliant thing about it is you pay $19,000 to get the degree. It takes 3 years, three and a half for me, and you can't do anything with it. So I have that degree, and then I was like, this is so ridiculous. I didn't feel any closer to a sense of purpose with it because I was told you need to get a degree, and so I got it. I surprised my parents. I flew back from overseas for graduation, and my parents didn't really seemingly care. And if I think about it, I only really did it because my dad wanted me to do it to make him proud, and he may have been, but he didn't look at. So I was like, what am I doing? So I took off overseas, backpacking, like many Australians do after university or after school. Some of us do it too. And I was there for a year and a half, just backpacking around, shoestring budget, bouncing in between countries, doing all the things for a number of years.
So you were already a seeker and an adventurer at that time? Or you were just trying to get away from your parents and having to be perfect?
I was always abstract. I was always quirky in the way I thought and the things I did within my little environment. But no, I wasn't. I didn't know I was an adventurer. I just played rugby. I was very disciplined. That was my thing. And then at 22, I dislocated my shoulder, couldn't play rugby, finished university, and I was like, what do I do? I'll go traveling. And that completely opened up this creative, other artsy side of me that I'd never, this adventurous side that I thought perhaps might be there, but I just saw it for the first time. And I blossomed, I just grew.
Seb started writing, and I mean writing. He was basically blogging without a blog. He simply started sending emails back to his friends at home, trying to make them laugh with his big travel stories, the strange new experiences he'd have, the exploration of culture. If you've ever had a chance to backpack around, you'll understand how the adventures shape you. But it was mostly the people.
So I was meeting all these new people. I'd always played rugby with the same people growing up. I rode surfboats with the same people. You're at school with the same people. And for the first time, I was meeting new people, and they were reflecting things back to me about me that I'd never really heard before.
And Seb really bounced around.
South America, Central America, US for the first time, into Europe, down into Africa.
Towards the end, he caught a ferry from Spain to Morocco. And after spending a bit of time with some new friends...
They were nomads, and we stayed with them in a desert in the Sahara.
Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. It was dangerous and all that. It was so fun.
He had a revelation.
And then I was on a bus listening to Fields of Gold by Sting, and it just dawned on me, oh, I should go home now. That was it. So I flew home.
So Seb went home. He journeyed on a bit more, trying to find his way, like his next job, which consisted of giving away donuts on the street.
There's a radio station in Australia called Nova, and they have this street team called the Casanovas, or they did. And I would drive around, and the main DJ, people would call you up and say, where are you? And you'd be like, well, I'm on the corner of Parramatta Road and wherever. We're giving away free donuts. If you come down and say the magic word, like you do this live cross and then give away donuts. Yeah, epic job. Really fun. But I had a million. I honestly had a million. I got fired from that job too. I got fired from most of my job.
Yep. He got fired from handing out donuts on the side of the road.
Shit happens.
It does.
So he moved on.
And then a friend of mine said, do you want to come to Canada and help me start an inflatable movie screen business?
I have an inflatable movie screen.
There you go.
I use it in my backyard when we camp out with my little boys.
Not sure that was an important fact for y'all to know, but now you do. So here we are. Another fun fact. Guess what movie we watched on it during our summer campout? The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. I know, not the first thing you would think about when you think of an August campout, right? But my boys are 4 and 8 and make weird life choices. What can I say? Okay, so back to Seb and his Canadian inflatable movie screen job.
But I ended up in Canada. And while I was there, I was 25 at this point. While I was there, that's when I got the phone call that kind of stopped everything for me.
So tell me about that.
So I was 25, middle of the night, phone rings. I pick it up, and it's a friend of mine from Sydney. And he breaks the news to me that one of my childhood friends called Chris, who I rode surf boats with, gone to school with, played rugby with, drank plenty of beers with, Chris had died. Just died overnight. And it was...
Was it something that happened or?
Yeah, it was a party stunt gone wrong.
Oh.
Seb says he doesn't like to talk about exactly what happened out of respect for Chris's family.
Yeah, and like some of our close friends were there, obviously. And yeah, it just out of the blue. And it rocked an entire community. A lot of people knew Chris. Everyone loved Chris. And yeah, I remember putting the phone down, sitting next to the phone, and just thinking about life. Why am I here? All those sort of questions popped up. And then I thought about Chris's life a lot. You know, in this moment, I just thought about his life, and I wondered whether if he had another chance, another 24 years, he was 24. If he had another 24 years, would he live the same? Would he change anything? Did he have regret? And I don't think he did. I think he would have done the same stuff, was my conclusion. And then I flipped that question on myself and thought, if today was my last day, could I look back at everything and say the same, that I didn't have any regret? And I'd never taken a moment to look at my life from that perspective before, and I just realized instantly, oh my God, I would change everything. I didn't know who I was, didn't know what I stood for. I was literally drifting. I was helping a friend in this odd inflatable movie screen business only because I didn't know what I wanted. I had just been completely influenced, and I'd just been living a life that other people expected of me, which also is one of the biggest regrets of the dying. There's a book called, I think it's called The 5 Regrets by Bronnie Ware.
The book is actually called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And Bronnie Ware is a palliative care nurse who spent time with countless patients in their last 3 to 12 weeks of life. She spent time talking to them, understanding commonalities about what people would have done differently. Here's what she found. People said, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with friends. I wish that I had let myself be happier. And as Seb correctly noted, the most common regret of all. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
And that's the biggest regret. People say on their deathbed, I wish I'd lived a life true to me, not one that others expected of me. And that's where I was. So in that moment, I thought, okay, this isn't, if I'm not happy and I understand that I want to be, how do I become happier? And I thought, oh, I guess it's just through doing things that make me smile. So I fetched a pen and a piece of paper and just began writing down a list of things that I hoped would make me smile. And a lot of it was based on exploring and people and experiences. It wasn't necessarily travel to X, Y, or Z. It was try this, put yourself in this situation. And that was the beginning of a list. And pretty quickly there was a list of 100 things. And the next day, I flew to Las Vegas and married a stranger in Vegas.
So why was that the first thing on your list?
Well, I was always an abstract thinker. I was always quirky, and everyone's list is different, right? And it was just always one of those things. It was like, oh, you can do that.
Yes, you can do that. And so Seb did. He proposed to a stripper. And
she said yes, an exotic dancer.
it was all set. It would take place at the Say I Do wedding drive-thru. There was an Elvis impersonator, a stretch Hummer. Everything was going to be great. But it didn't go exactly according to plan.
She didn't turn up, though.
That's right. One little detail didn't go quite right. Crystal bailed.
So I just looked at the crowd and said, is there anyone else here who would consider marrying me? And there was. And her name was Chevali. And Chevali was the receptionist of my hostel. So she got on the Hummer and we got married. We kissed. And that was the first and last time we touched.
It might seem silly to some, but for young Seb, he just wanted to feel what it felt like to do something wild, something you read about in a Hunter S. Thompson novel, just throwing caution to the wind and having a banging great story to tell. So Seb pulled off his first task on the list. So now what?
But here's the thing that not many people know. When I talk about this on stage, I've only got so much time. So people think that I did that and then I was off to the races and I was doing my list. That's not what happened. I married a stranger in Vegas. I flew back home and I conformed back to normality. What did I do? I started an inflatable movie screen business, actually, with the same guy, but back in Australia. And I did that for 2.5 years and I don't think I was depressed. I don't know, but I was very unhappy. That's all I know for sure. And in that 2.5-year period, I didn't do anything other than work. And then I broke down in tears one day and I was like, oh, why is that? What's happening? And I remembered I had written this list with one check, and that was marry a stranger.
So he returned to his list, this magic list of 100 things that was compiled to offer him joy, a sense of fun, and just being alive, which, by the way, is why he doesn't like the traditional term bucket list.
I know that you have an aversion to calling it a bucket list.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I just think it's, this idea like kicking in the bucket is very death-focused, things to do before you die. I almost feel like it's fear-driven, and I would rather focus on living well rather than cramming stuff in before I die.
Fair. I get it. Okay, so moving on. Seb had accomplished thing number 1, then got complacent, went back to doing what he thought he was supposed to do and found he was unhappy. He was having a hard time finding gratitude. Imagine that. So he went back to his list. And the thing he'd pick to tackle next, well, let's just say it would certainly change his perspective and deliver him that grateful feeling for his own life that he'd been searching for.
So I had been, number 12 was visit an inmate on death row.
God.
Yeah, so I had for a year, I Googled death row pen pals, and I just met with a database of thousands of people on death row. And I read through lots of their profiles and started talking to this guy called James, but wrote him a letter. And I was like, oh, I'll write him a letter, see what happens. 2 weeks later, I get a response, handwritten from jail, from death row in Oklahoma, McAllister, Oklahoma. I'm in Sydney. And we went back and forth for 12 months. And then he said, do you want to come in and visit me? And I was like, actually, yes. And this was just at the time where the company, basically when I broke down that night in tears and I pulled my list out of my drawer and I thought, that's what I have to do to change my life. I actually have to commit to this list now. I called up my business partner for this inflatable movie screen business, who was my best mate, Dave. And I said, mate, as soon as you pay the business off, I'm out of here. So we kind of paid the business off very quickly after. Didn't make any money out of it, but yeah, that was at the same time J-Lock, invited me to visit him in death row. And I was like, well, that'll do. That's the next thing I'm doing. So I flew to Oklahoma.
Right, this best arrival car checking on call. Ladies and gentlemen, you clear your luggage at carousel number 4. Again, check luggage, carousel number 4. Have a great day.
Can't remember the name of the airport, and then got a rental car. I hadn't really spent too much time in the US at that point. I left, by the way, on my 28th birthday, 9th of June, 2009. I left for Oklahoma. Land, drive 2 hours to McAllister, this tiny town. And I just see on this hill in the middle of town, like this glistening building, and it's all the barbed wire around this death row facility. And I go in and they take off, my belt, and they take all my phone and everything. And they just say, this is how you get to where you need to be to talk to J-Lock, to James.
I ask Seb the obvious next question.
What did James do?
I'm not sure I was entirely prepared for the answer, although it reminds us that life is not a movie with a perfect plotline. Life is the real deal.
I didn't know until I got there, but he denies doing it, but there was a baby killed. Yeah. He said it was his girlfriend. She said it was him. They couldn't really prove it. He was on death row. She was serving a lifetime sentence somewhere.
Look, if this were a movie, James the inmate would have somehow been wrongly accused and Seb would have been the hero that helped him get his voice heard so he could obtain justice and get out of jail to go solve world peace or something. In the real world, death row inmates are often on death row for a reason. But here's the thing. Seb doesn't have to be a vigilante for justice to make this meetup make sense. He just needed to show up. To meet this human that expanded his perspective. I mean, here he was, crying just a few weeks ago over his boredom and apathy around his inflatable movie screen business. Yet here was this whole other horrific situation that just put everything in perspective.
So when I get there, they take all my things off. I walk through these, a door opens, I walk past it, closes behind me, and that happens 3 times. And then I'm 3 layers underground suddenly, and I'm in this room and there's 6 windows, 3 on each side with a little stool in front of each one. And I go up to window number 2 on the right, and there's a phone on the wall, reinforced glass with metal bars in front of it. And he's not in there. And I just sit there, and then he just comes in through the door on the other side and sits down in front of me, and we fist bump. I've been chatting to this guy
through the window,
through the glass, onto the
yes.
glass, so we don't touch. And I was there for 5.5 hours, and we went deep. It was crazy. He got out an envelope and it was all these photos of women. And he's like, these are my girlfriends. This is Sunshine. This is Babe. This is whatever. He had all these cute names for them all, and he put them up against the window. I mean, I could barely see him. He knew more girls than I did.
Who knew that death row inmates had fans? Weird, but strangely fascinating.
When I checked in, there was a lady who came in, and I was just making small talk and, who are you here to see, without realizing what that actually might mean. And she said, I'm here to meet my husband. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. And I'm like, what am I saying sorry for? Like, he's probably in here for good reason. Anyway, I said, how'd you guys meet? And she went, oh, I just met him just writing, just pen pals. So a lot of women are attracted to a bad boy, right? And so they got married. So she was going in, and I said, how often do you come in? She's like, well, this will be the last time. He's getting killed tomorrow. And I was like, I sit down, I'm talking to J-Lock, and she's next to me talking to her dude. And I say to J-Lock, I'm like, what did the guy do? And he said, oh, this guy doesn't want to live. He killed a lot of people, admits it, has no problem with that. And he deserves to die.
Whew. Okay. Let's just take a deep, cleansing breath, everyone, shall we? In through your nose, 2, 3, out through your mouth, 2, 3. Okay, that's better. And in fact, that's what Seb did too.
So when we finished, I walked outside. It was a hot, hot summer's day in Oklahoma. And it sounds very weird, but I took off all my clothes. I was in my underwear, but I just took off all my clothes. I just felt, when I walked outside and knew that I could leave that building, there was something about freedom that just struck me as something I was just so grateful for, but I hadn't been beforehand. And I could do anything. And I just took my shirt off, took my pants off. I had my underwear on still, as I said. But yeah, I was just sat on the trunk of the car, just really mellow and appreciative. And that's how I feel, to be honest. Every time I do something from my list, the actual emotion might be different. I might be like euphoric or bouncing or screaming, depending on what it is. Or I could be like, deeply reflective like I was on that occasion. But at the core, it is a realization of something that is about freedom and agency I have in my life, which I'm grateful for. Yeah.
So, by doing this deeply poignant, brave, and somewhat odd activity, Seb gained a tremendous sense of perspective and gratitude. And something else came out of it too.
So I wrote about this whole experience, going into death row and meeting him for the first time. And that's actually what got me a book deal. A publisher read that and went, "Oh, can we make a book about your things?"
And so the 100 Things book deal was manifested into existence. And Seb would have the opportunity to explore the rest of his list and to start to see where it took him.
I think what's so interesting, Seb, about your journey is that some of the things that are on your list are things that wouldn't necessarily be on my list because it's not bungee jumping or going to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Some of them are quite dark or might even put you in an entanglement that's complicated, like a marriage and an annulment.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like, I always say I didn't wake up until I almost died. I think your point is, don't wait until you have a near-death experience or something to go out there and live, because having different experiences teaches you different things. Do I have that right?
100%. And we do wait. I waited until a friend of mine passed, and you hear of people who are diagnosed with an illness, or someone, like you say, who confronts an addiction and breaks through, and they're the people that go and do the things. And again, you don't have to wait. The commonality I found with everyone who does that, and you tell me if you agree or not, but ultimately you just give yourself permission. That for me is the key. Give yourself permission to consider what you might prefer to be doing. And in that question, and with real thought and then action, you can change your life. And if you're breathing, you can change your life.
I have so many questions, mainly because I've always thought of these lists as your traditional bucket list. I mean, I've said it a million times. Oh, you went on safari in Africa? That's totally on my bucket list. Oh, you did a polar bear plunge? Go you. That is on my bucket list. The New York Marathon? Totally on my bucket list. Okay, wait, by the way, I'm proud to say that one was on my bucket list, and I actually got my ass out there, trained for 4 months and did it. But with most of them, they just sit on this vague and pretend list, which, if I'm being honest, I haven't even ever really written down.
From a goal setting, goal striving perspective, you write something down, you become much more likely to do it. 42% statistics suggest.
Okay, got it. So step 1, actually make the list. But step 2, I'd be lost because, like most people, I just say I'm going to do all these things, but I'm waiting to do them, quote, before I die, when, who really knows when that's going to happen? So I like Seb's idea of the reframe, but I still wouldn't know exactly how to start. Like, which thing on the list do you tackle first? Are there any best practices for this process? Apparently, a lot of other people had the same questions once they had started reading about Seb's work.
So you end up starting a community, your 100 Things community.
Yeah.
So I know that you've kind of shepherded a lot of people through this process. Do you find that people are challenged on where to start, or once they start writing, does it start flowing?
No, I think you're right. Some people have trouble putting it together, do have a framework around it. And I get people to start off by writing a eulogy. I actually get people to start off by giving themselves permission to be with me, which of course they do because they choose to be. And then the second step is reflection, and I get them to write a eulogy. Today was your last. What could you truly say about yourself? What would be said? If you had to write your eulogy give it to your best friend to read about you, what would it actually say? And it can't only be positive. And I think that allows people to recognize not only important aspects in their life, which, of course revolve around family or love or personal achievement or impact, being a friend, chasing your goals, whatever it might be, but it allows you to truly think and go, well, I wasn't actually the best friend that I wanted to be, or partner, or I didn't chase my dreams with the way that I would like to have said I did. Or maybe you did, it might be the opposite, but I'm still yet to meet someone who gets to write their eulogy and look at it and smile and go, 10 out of 10. Yeah, that was perfect. I have met people who, after this process and sometime after, look at their life and they're like, yeah, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. But that's the second step. So I think reflection. And I think by understanding the areas of your life that you've overlooked and also the ones you've done well in, you can start to build a list that would improve what that eulogy might look like in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10, 20, 50 years time. That's the process.
Seb realized he had a teachable system here that could help others as much as he'd helped himself. More importantly, he realized it suddenly felt like his responsibility to pay it forward.
I never thought I'd have a book. I never thought, or being a speaker.
But Seb very much has both of these things in his life today. In fact, that's how I know Seb. We're buddies from the keynote speaking circuit. And it was on one of these stages that he got approached with a pretty cool opportunity.
I gave a talk on stage in LA for the first time, and I got approached by a guy who said, I want to make a show about you.
Here's a little snippet. For reference, the first part shows Seb crossing number 58 off his list. Skydive naked. Check out @Gratitudeology on Instagram, where I'll post the clip.
People always ask me why I do the ridiculous things I do. We all have two choices in life: to walk the path of comfort or strive for the things that make us feel alive. I just never liked the term bucket list.
Yeah, I don't think death should be the ultimate motivator. I think living should be the motivator. My name's Seb Terry, and I have a list of 100 things that I'm trying to do to be happier in life.
So he's officially started taking his message from his own notebook to the media masses, and it starts to catch fire immediately.
But the moment I decided to do this, I was on television the next day, and someone said, that's a really cool story. You should go on a morning breakfast show in Australia.
We're with 100 Things adventurer Seb Terry. Now, Seb, what else have you got on the list that you need to tick off?
There is one thing, number 26, is to help a stranger. And I think that's a fairly easy one. So I guess, I don't know if there's anyone in the audience or anyone listening on TV, but I just want to help a stranger.
And from that, I just started getting emails from people saying, this is amazing. I haven't done anything. This is amazing. Wow. How do you... So this community very naturally developed. And then people started asking me for help. And the first time I really got to help someone in a way which I felt was meaningful was I met a guy called Mark. He was able-bodied into his mid-20s, and he was backpacking through Europe, through Italy. Well, and I had backpacked through Italy in my 20s as well. And Mark got bitten by a tick there, and he got Lyme's disease and went from being able-bodied into a quadriplegic. So Mark cannot move, cannot speak. He's a 24-hour ventilator and care team to live. And he saw me on TV in Australia, created his own list, asked me to shave his head. It's number 1 on his list, and so I did.
Just for the sensation of having a shaved head, or to see himself like that, he just liked the idea of it. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever his reasons are. As you say, everyone's list is different. And it was great. And as I was doing it, I learned about this story. And I also felt like I was helping someone. Like my story until then had been all about me, which, as we spoke about earlier, it's important to think about you. You have to think about you. But this is the first time I'd really helped someone. And I said, is there anything else I can do? Mark tried to say something to me, didn't understand him, but his carer told me that he actually wanted to complete a half marathon. And I said, how can I help? And then he looked at me and said 2 words, which I did understand. And he said, push me. I instantly became 100% obsessed with the idea of pushing Mark. There was really nothing more important to me, nothing. So I signed us up for the Melbourne Half Marathon that day, flew home to Manly Beach in Sydney, where I was living back then, and got a shopping cart, trained running with the shopping cart for 2 months, and then flew back down to Melbourne and pushed him. And we got it. We finished the half marathon. And the beautiful thing about it was, at the beginning of the race, it was just me and my girlfriend at the time, and actually a couple of his carers as well. By the end of the race, there was like 20 people, 30 people who had probably helped along the way. And it just went to show that it's, as people, we're just wired and have this innate ability and desire to connect in many ways, but certainly through supporting others. We just need an opportunity. And so when they saw the opportunity to help push Mark, people joined us. And another really cool part that I don't often talk about is that after we did that, Mark almost died, by the way. His ventilator stopped working at the 19-kilometer mark, and we had to manually put air into him, basically. But he wanted to then complete a full marathon, and I wasn't able to do it because I was speaking on that exact date in the US, so I couldn't contractually get out of it, really. And 16 strangers came around from our community to help Mark complete a full marathon.
One of the things I learned early on in recovery circles is this. They say we can only keep what we have by giving it away. And I don't just mean money. I mean knowledge, love, hope, gratitude. When we pay it forward, we just feel good. That's the cyclical nature of life. It's an inspiration boomerang. I wanted to ask about another story I had heard of Seb's, one that I found especially touching.
I heard another story about Helen, and that was a very powerful story.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so Helen's, I think it was her nephew reached out to me and said, my auntie Helen is on the verge of losing her life.
Helen had terminal cancer, and she only wanted one thing. One very simple thing.
She only had so much time left, and her dream was to touch the snow. She'd never touched snow in her life, and drink schnapps, butterscotch schnapps in the snow. And I said, oh, we can do that for sure. So I went out to my community and I shared it, and I said, hey, can we help this lady get to the snow? I told them everything we needed, and within 24 hours, pretty much, we had someone paid for accommodation. We had a chaperone. We had everything organized. The day before she was meant to go down, her husband called me and told me she died. The day before. And he then told me, though, that her last wish was to pass on all the generosity that had been shown to her onto someone else who also shared that goal of seeing snow. So I had that phone call with him, and I said, do you want me to look for that person? He said, yeah, that's what we both want you to do. So I went to my social media again and said, if there's anyone who needs to touch the snow, it's on their list, let me know. So we suddenly got all these stories and eventually found this little old lady who basically had had a life of overcoming cancer a couple of times. She had been to the snow as a kid once, but she wanted to see it one more time before she died, basically. So I met her. She was legit. And so we sent her. But the day before, she said, where's my chaperone?
She was so old that she wasn't able to travel on her own and had thought Seb would be coming along with her. Seb was out on the road at a speaking engagement. So once again, to the internet he goes.
So I then went to the social media and said, hey, can anyone chaperone this old lady down to the snow? And this girl called Mel said, I'll do it. So she spent a weekend or maybe even a week with this lady down in the snow, and she got to touch the snow. She got wildly drunk on schnapps, and that was that. And again, it's, there are so many things to draw from this, and I'd spend an hour just trying to do it, to touch on all of them. But I think it's never too old to have, you're never too old to have goals. We should always be dreaming. We should always be aspiring to do things that fill us with a sense of meaning, things that matter. I think they give us purpose, and I think it allows us to act with passion in our life. And at the same time, people are good. I just see it every day. I'm not religious in that sense, but I do completely believe in people, and it just fills me with optimism about the future. And of course, there are bad eggs out there and there are things happening in the world which are atrocious, but all I can do is continue to do what I do and try and connect and meet good people. And I'm very lucky to say that seems to be what happens. And by virtue of doing that, lots of people are doing things that are important to them, i.e. checking off goals on their lists.
Yeah, this is a beautiful place to bring it to the home stretch. And I just want to ask you, what would you tell people, right, to inspire them to get going on this? Because I think a lot of people, like, it sounds great to make a list of 100 things, but most people are just trying to keep their head above water every day and just get to work and stay afloat. And so how do people get the motivation to actually take this seriously?
I think an important point that you mentioned earlier is goals don't have to be world-changing. You don't have to cure cancer. You don't have to get to the top of Everest. You just have to have goals that are meaningful to you. You don't need 100 either. I mean, really, you just need one. I would say for those people out there who feel like they're tight on time or resources, or they're in a bind, I would just ask them or urge them to just sit down and try and work out 1, 2, maybe 3 things that are important to them they're currently not giving attention to, and then to really break down how they would achieve each of them. Or even if it's hard to think, well, how would I achieve it? Just what's 1 or 2 things you could do to push yourself in that direction? There's this theory around completions. So if we just get to complete something, it doesn't matter what it is, make a cup of tea in the morning, make my bed in the morning. If you complete that, it starts to create this, it cultivates a real positive mindset. Oh, I'm worthy of achieving things. I can achieve things. It builds your confidence. It gives you a better sense of self and your capacity. So I would say if you can do that as often as you can, every day, just try and get little completions, and certainly in the direction of a particular goal that's important to you, that would be a good place to start when we talk about progress towards goals.
So that's really it. You don't have to skydive naked, visit death row, or marry a stranger. You just need to ask yourself, what could I do? Maybe something a bit out of the ordinary, that through its completion, I could give myself a feeling that life is a little more magic today than it was yesterday. And that, at its core, is practicing gratitudeology. I'm grateful that Seb helped us all get a crash course in what it means to be fully awake and alive on today's show. If you want to learn more about Seb and his global movement, you can follow him on Instagram at Seb100things or check out his website, sebastianterry.com. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology Podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here.